All right, let's talk some track and field now. The last time Jamaica won a global outdoor medal in the men's mile relay was at the 2022 World Championship in Eugene, Oregon. Since that silver medal performance, the black, green and gold failed to medal at the 2023 World Championships and didn't even qualify for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. And although the team has qualified for this year's Tokyo World Champs, their performance at the World Relays earlier this month left a lot to be desired, and so it is understandable that Jamaican fans were ecstatic to see the man who last anchored them in 2022 back on the scene. Christopher Taylor, the 25-year-old Jamaica national junior record holder at 400 meters, clocked a promising 45.66 seconds on Saturday in Kingston, his first race since a 2.5-year ban for an anti-doping rule violation, specifically charged for refusing or failing to submit a sample in 2023. And as expected, he was delighted to be back.
It's an amazing feeling to be back, I had high expectation of myself. I came out here and I delivered. I wanted to do my first race on my home track, and I came and I did that. I'm really happy with the performance, not expecting it, but I surprised myself, and that's amazing. So it's just for me to go back to the drawing board and keep on working. My body is in shock, I must say. I haven't been doing a lot of stuff like this for the past few weeks. So, coming out here and my first race, 45.6, it's been like 2 years I haven't competed, most likely 3. So it's just a good feeling till I came when I get the rust off, and I did get a 45. I was expecting a 45, to be honest. I was expecting a 46, but I got 45, so I'm really happy with that feeling. This is my season opener. I don't have a aim as yet going into the national championship. I'm going back to the drawing board and try to get a few more races in, and then when I get into trials mode, then I will decide what I will be doing. But this says I'm in pretty good shape. It's a pretty good season opener. So it's just for me to keep on moving from here. Mentally, I'm always mentally strong. So, it's just ups and downs. Everyone have obstacles in life, and this is my obstacle. And I'm happy I'm getting over it and moving on.
Yeah, the former World Under-18 champion also expressed gratitude to the fans, having received a rousing ovation following his effort.
Awesome feeling knowing that I still have a huge fan base in Jamaica, After everything went down, a lot of them could have turned against me, but they did not. They kept on sending motivational messages, asking me to come back to the sport, telling me that I have a place in the sport. And I know this was my first race, and they still came out and supported me. The crowd was amazing going down backstretch, but after that, I was just zoned out to see if I could execute a proper 400, especially in the last quarter of the race. So I wasn't hearing much of the crowd, but I heard it was good.
All right, Christopher Taylor there, our track and field correspondent and chief content editor at SportsMax.tv. Leighton Levy joins us now. Leighton, it's a pleasure to have you as usual. What were your expectations going into Saturday's race for Chris Taylor, and how does that compare with what you saw?
Well, after 2 years, Ricardo, I didn't really have any expectations. I was kind of keeping an open mind what to expect when when you haven't competed for 2 years. A lot of muscle memory fades. You're not in that competition shape. Yeah, because training is one thing, but when you add the adrenaline factor, it's a completely different dynamic. So I had an open mind, but notwithstanding that, I was pretty impressed with the performance, especially, well, before even the performance. I mean, I was very impressed with his physique. The guy looks 15% bigger than I've ever seen him before. When he lined up in the blocks, when they were introducing them, I almost didn't recognize him, how massive his chest and his back was, which tells you that he's been putting in the work. But the performance itself, for me, I was really impressed. He flew out of the blocks like he was shot out of a gun, stormed down the backstretch. I think the lack of races for the last 2 years took a toll on him for the last 150. But then to come home relatively strong and run 45.6, I mean, wow, that's all I can say, wow. Because had he had 2 more races in his legs, that could have easily been a 44 race on Saturday. given that his PB is 44.63, the reality is that Chris Taylor is right back where he left off when he was suspended 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, and you know, Leighton, I listened to him in that interview done by Kimani O'Sullivan, one of our producers here, and the sort of maturity I'm hearing from Chris stood out to me. I must admit, he sounds like an individual who has been through a lot, obviously, but he's looking at a lot of things from a positive standpoint, and he's contextualizing everything at this stage in a positive way, in a way to say it's time to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, he could have taken a completely different approach when he was suspended, because if I remember, when he was suspended, shortly after he was suspended, I think he had put out a message on social media that suggested that he was pretty much, this was the end of the road, or certainly clear that he wasn't much invested in it anymore, because this is going to take him back to when he's 26. But the reality is that he's in his prime now, and he would have matured over the past 2 years, given the adversity that he faced, given the mistakes that he's made in his immediate past, and he would have learned from those mistakes. And I think that's what you saw on Saturday, a kind of growing up of Chris Taylor. Remember, he's been one of the most successful athletes ever to come through Champs. I think he's only lost one race his entire career at Champs. He was used to success. He was getting his feet wet at the senior level when the suspension came. So now, having all of that experience behind him, having 2 years to think about it, having 2 years to mature, it's not really a surprise how much more mature he sounds now, because that maturity comes with the experiences that he's had that has taught him so many lessons, some of them very, very crucial, like the last one that kept him out of the sport for, as you said, almost 3 years. So I think this was, look, he could have easily have capitulated and said, okay, you know what, and thrown up his hands in the air and said, okay, this is it for me, and play a victim. But I think he used it as a source of inspiration to come back, given that the immense talent that we know he possesses. And I think that manifested itself, first of all, in the training under Gregory Little. And of course, now with his first race back on the track, which was a very impressive debut after 2 years.
Yeah, Leighton, what can you tell us about his training group and his coach? Because, of course, before the suspension, he was training in Florida. Now he is back home at Tumbleweed Track Club. He's back home in Kingston now. You just pointed out Gregory Little is the coach. What can you tell us about Gregory Little as a coach and that Titans training camp?
Well, we've seen Gregory Little do some remarkable things over the past few years. I mean, as we know, he's extremely experienced, having worked with MVP, having worked with racers, two of the most successful track clubs in Jamaica, and then going on his own, and then partnering with Michael Frater before that separation happened last year. But Gregory Little is the man who has been responsible for Malik James King, and of course, Asinia Wilson, who we've both seen make significant progress over the last 2 years at the 400-meter hurdles. If you remember, Malik James King ran 47.42, I think it was, at the last championships, where that was just outside the national record held by Rashawn Clark at 43.34. We've seen Asinia Wilson open with a 48.8 this season. So this was perhaps the best fit for Christopher Taylor coming in as a 400-meter runner, even though word is that he's going to be focusing on the 200 meters for the national championships. I'll find out more tomorrow, and I suppose you can look at. You'll see it on the website tomorrow, after I speak to his coach to find out where he's going to be at national championships. But Little has significant experience, and I think working with the likes of Asinia Wilson, of course, Malik James King, who are over the hurdles in this event and would have had to, similar training in terms of the over distance work and the strength and conditioning work. I think Christopher Taylor is in the right place for him, now that he's not at Tumbleweed anymore. And I think what we're seeing are any indication of what is to come. I think we saw some of that on Saturday night.
Can you talk to us then about your expectations about maybe the possibilities of what his decisions will be in the coming months? Because you just suggested that there's a strong chance that he'll go 200 even though more of his success in his career to this point have come over or has come over 400 meters. But he does have speed. His PR for the 100 is 10.11. He has done 20.35 in the 200, which means that he has speed. And maybe going 200 may not be such a bad idea, you know, given his training plan and what the coaches think of his future.
Well, I've been told for months now that that is where his focus was. More than 200. In fact, I even heard that he's might be running the sprint double at the national championships. I had no confirmation of that yet, but I was told that his primary focus was primarily going to be on the 200 meters. Now, Chris Taylor is at 20-point man, so the reality is that can he go under, because if he's going to be competitive at the 200, he's going to be able to have to be running somewhere along the lines of 19.6, 19.7 to be in the conversation. Because, Noah Lyles and, of course, Kenny Bednarek and others have taken the times down to close to boat-like levels that we saw when Usain Bolt was competing. But based on what we saw on the weekend, it is not out of the realm of possibility that we could see a 19.8 Christopher Taylor at national championships. Given the strength and speed, and of course the speed endurance that is clearly still there, it might work out for him. The thing about it is that, given his experience at the 400s, and given that this could have easily been a 44 split had he had a couple of more races under his legs, maybe a 2-4 combination would probably be a better fit for him. But I mean, who am I? I mean, they must know what they're doing, and they must have an idea of what the numbers are telling them in training. So, but as you said, Lance, he has the speed. And so if he decides to step down, we've seen Usain Bolt do it successfully. And Christopher Taylor, while not similarly talented, certainly has enough talent to do well at the shorter distances.
Yeah, it's interesting when I listened to him in the interview with Kimani, where he said that, listen, I'm not exactly in trials mode yet, but when I do, I'll then have a better idea of what I want to do at the national championships. Do you suspect, Leighton, given that statement, that he is still at this stage open about what event to take on, and maybe, just maybe, the final decision will not just come down to the shape that he is in, but also what the national fields are looking like at both 200 and 400?
Well, let's start with the last thing first, Ricardo. If he decides to run the 200 in national championships, he's a shoe-in. There is nobody in Jamaica right now who is capable of running under 20 seconds consistently. We saw Brian Level run 19.97 last year. I believe those numbers are well within Christopher Taylor's capability. He runs a 200 at the Racers Grand Prix in a week's time, just over a week from now, I should say. So I think after that race, I think he probably have a clear indication of where he wants to go. The 400 man, that is a bit more competitive with Sean Bailey and, of course, DeAndre Watkins and, of course,
Javon Powell.
Javon Powell and, of course, my runner from GC Foster, who opened the season with 44.98.
Oh, no, Zandra and Barnes.
Right. So that might be a little bit more competitive for him. And given the fact that he's been away from the 400 so much long for so long, maybe the 200 is a better fit for him right now, because really, when you look around, the only person who could possibly challenge him over 200 right now is Brian Lavelle. And we've seen what Christopher Taylor can do when he's under pressure. It brings the best out of him. So I think it will come down to what happens after the Racers Grand Prix, how well he performs there. If we see a sub-20 time from him and a significant something like a 19.8 or 19.9 low, I think he probably will be more inclined to try that shorter distance for World Championships and test his luck there. Because even though he might not be on the podium, I think going up against the best of the world in Tokyo would give him a sense of where he needs to be in the years to come. He's just 26 years old. He's in his prime now, and will be in his prime for the next 2 to 3 years. So I think what happens at Racers Grand Prix will give him out a greater sense of where he thinks he wants to step back into the global field. Yeah. Which event is best suited to him.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Leighton, because at the Racers Grand Prix, there are a few Jamaicans that he is likely to face at the Nationals a few weeks later. Of course, the defending national champion, Brian Levy, Andrew Hudson, who was the champion before Levy dethroned him last year, will be in that race as well. And another youngster, the former Kingston College athlete, Adrian Carr, who has already gone 20.47 this season, will be in that race as well, alongside some of the world's best like Zarnell Hughes and so on. So that will really be a great opportunity for him to test his quality and his readiness over 200 meters, which will be, what, just 20 days before the start of the Nationals?
Absolutely. And of course, by then, he would have probably started his taper, which would then take him into the national championships in fine form to run even faster than he would have run previously. I think what we're seeing here is, and look, there is always a silver lining to this suspension, because 2.5 years out would have given his body a chance to recover from many years of intense competition at Boys and Girls Championships and his first couple of years as a senior athlete. So I think this actually could extend his longevity in the sport, given that his body is now rested to the point where he'll be fresh for the next few years. So I think, really, even if he goes for the 200, he still has an opportunity to change, because then after the World Championships this year, then there's another Worlds in 2027 and then the Olympics in 2028. He has a lot of time, and he'll still be in the prime of his career once he stays healthy. So I think the options are still wide open to him, depending on to see where he wants to go. Because I believe Christopher Taylor, based on what we saw on the weekend, can go 44 low if he has a few more races under his belt. When I say 44 low, I mean beyond his personal best of 44.63. Whether or not that will be able to get him on a podium in an era where we just saw at the Olympics where fifth place at 43.87. Maybe the dynamic works best for him at 200. But either way, it's going to be really competitive on the global stage. But if there's any Jamaican right now outside of Usain Bolt who can probably break into the top three of either event, it probably would be Christopher Taylor.
All right, let's leave it there. Sounds to me like he has a Jareem Richards problem. Both of them very difficult decisions in the next few months. But we have to leave it there, Leighton. Before we go, though, I just want to say from my standpoint, one of the most impressive things about that performance from Christopher Taylor, and you heard in the interview where he said he hasn't been doing a lot of this in recent weeks, when he said his body was in shock. From what I hear, he got a serious cramp a few weeks ago that prevented him from training in the way that he would have liked in the build-up to that race. In fact, that was the reason he didn't open a week earlier on the 17th of May and pushed back that opener to the 23rd. So, or was that the 24th? Sometimes I just can't keep up with time.
Yeah, you're going to know what I mean.
Okay, Leighton, on that note, let's go to a break. We'll be back with more on the SportsMax Zone.
Take it easy, guys.